evening and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn, the Black Hops Therapist. And tonight we're going to be talking about genealogy. This week on the Midday Moment of Positivity, I've been talking about the importance of history, but I also think it's important that we know our own personal history. And as always, I have an amazing guest who's going to talk about genealogy and knowing your family history. But we always start off with taking some deep cleansing breaths to have that woosah at the end of the day. You might have a lot going on, or it's always a good time just to have that woosah. So we're going to take in 3 deep cleansing breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let's get started. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. One more. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Just reminding you to just take some deep breaths. Life gets a little hectic. Stop, breathe. It can change your world. Dolores, how was that breathing for you?
It was great.
Awesome. So I always ask my guests, tell us who you are and tell us something cool about yourself.
Well, my name's Dolores Rodgers, and I consider myself a family historian and genealogist, and I focus on community research. And I guess in relationship to that, one fun fact about myself is I've been able to identify at least 4 Civil War veterans that are in my family and in my husband's family. And I can date my family history back to before Texas was a state and a part of the United States. So
that is deep. That is amazing. And as we talk tonight, we're going to find out how you did that. Genealogy is so important. We need to know we need to know our past. Our personal history is what I call it. I'll tell you a little story about my family history. When we were young, my grandmother could tell you from her side of the family how they were enslaved, came here enslaved in Virginia, left Virginia, went to Ohio, went to Texas, and she could tell you name before, we were young, didn't know any better, weren't listening, but I do remember, those areas. Our family, her side of the family, they didn't take to slavery very well, and they would end up killing the master or somebody and happened to escape. And that happened in Virginia, and it happened in Ohio, and they ended up in Texas. And just even knowing that little bit and knowing that the first Black postmaster in Texas was one of my ancestors, was one of my relatives, and being able to know a little and having those names. And it is so important when you find out, it's like, wow, knowing that part of you. So how did you get interested in genealogy?
Well, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and we all remember Roots, the movie Roots, and that sparked a lot of interest just around the country in knowing your ancestry and trying to reach back to the motherland. But for me, my grandfather, he would sit on the porch, and it was so important to him to talk about history and his family. He wanted you to know who your family was, what they did, where they were from. And every now and then he would spill a little tea, like the fact that he and my grandmother were related. And so, yes, their lines crossed each other.
And a lot of it really happened more prominently than we know.
Right. And my maternal grandfather, that's who I'm talking about. He always they spoke Creole, And
Mm.
so it was always fascinating to me. What are they saying and what is it all about? And why do they not want me to know how to speak this language? So
Because they could say
that,
things in front of you and you wouldn't know what they were saying.
right. And I said, where did they get this from? My paternal side is basically Texas folks and Georgia and Alabama, but I mean, this was just foreign to me. So that sparked my interest and started my research, in college as a part-time thing. I was
Oh, wow.
obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, where were those Creoles from? Louisiana or what?
They were from St. Landry Parish in
Mm.
Louisiana and St. Martin Parish there. Some of the original settlers in the area, and were part of families that settled a community called Pierre Leron.
Okay.
So they have a deep history, even tracing their history back to Saint Domingue. So
now, where is Saint Domingue?
It's now not, listen, it's now what we would call the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That far. That is so cool. So you mentioned earlier you found out some things about your family. So just tell us, because when we hear what you found out, maybe that can spark people. Well, I want to know what's in my family. So tell us some things about your family that you've learned.
Well, I learned that one of my family members, he was he was really a businessman. And if anybody knows where Eunice, Louisiana is, most of the Black people who own property in that area, he actually sold that property to them.
Oh, wow.
And but the mystery in the family is, how did he acquire that property? And some people say it was from his enslaver that he inherited that property. But that's been one of my mysteries that I've been trying to solve for the past few years. How did he sell? There were more than, if you go to the St. Landry Parish, there are more than 100 land transactions of sales of property that he sold to families in that community.
So he was doing something.
He was doing something right. He was doing something right. Yes.
Wow. And give us one more fun fact about your family. That was cool.
Let's see. Another fun. Oh, I was able to identify an individual with a connection to the continent. And she was through DNA. I took a DNA test and, and family members. And she is 100%. Her family is from Ghana. But she's living in London. And so her family has always lived in Ghana. And so we've been having conversations about, well, are there any family stories about people who left and you never saw them again? And so it's very interesting, talking to her that not everybody, we assume that there are griots everywhere on the continent and they keep that family history, but not all families can trace their history. And the curiosity behind, why did you take this test? And it was, most people want to see if the stories that their family tells them about their origins are correct. They want to know their ethnicity. They want to know where they came from, that kind of thing. So I thought that was a great thing. And I also was able to identify one other gentleman who's living in Los Angeles, who also is 100% Nigerian. And we have a DNA connection. Okay. So I'm going to say probably in our fourth or fifth generation, we shared an ancestor. We shared an ancestor. Yes.
That is so neat. And that is one of the benefits of doing the DNA and beginning to find out, really know your roots. I know for me, a couple of years ago, I had a relative on my dad's side who was, well, two. One was a woman who was right at 100. And she'd have her good and bad days in terms of being able to just really tell you everything. And so this was a while back because I took a tape recorder. So I can tell you it's been a minute.
Great.
But
That's
yeah, but I took a tape recorder and just sat down and talked to her. And she was a wealth of knowledge about family. And I think we're going to talk about how do you get your history, and there are the formal ways of genealogy, but finding those elders and just let them talk. I had some questions, and yes, sometimes they may ramble, but just let them talk. I had another, and these are both on my father's side of the family, had another relative, a gentleman, and he loved talking about his family. Did the same thing. Took, that then I think we took a video camera and, recorded him, but being able to record the stories, like you say, the oral history. Every family doesn't keep it, but when you get those family members that are 90s and above, they know some stuff.
They sure do.
And it's in their head, and we need to get it out. So going and, they're formal. You can even go online and talk about, what kind of questions to ask. But I say just get out there and talk. What was life like when you were a little girl? What games did you play? What was school like? And begin to hear that, and and the more they talk and engage, I find it so amazing. That's more of the informal, but
well, actually, that is what genealogists tell you to do. Okay. First you start with yourself. You document who you are, where you were born, your connections, your mother, your parents. Document that. Because somebody, generations to come, will want to know that information. And then interview as many elders as you possibly can. And also try to also interview family members, other family members and friends, because their friends sometimes know a lot about the family and where the family was and the stories, and they can confirm those stories. So before you even pick up, or I guess enroll in some subscription like Ancestry and all of that, you got to do the basics. And one of them is interviewing your relatives, interviewing your ancestors, those people who can tell you what they remember. And the stories that they have. And so then there are other things you can do. Of course, you can, sometimes people are searching for family and they have no idea where they may not know their parent. They may not know their grandparent. Sometimes DNA can help with that. But there are also a lot of online resources. And one of the things I tell people, your public library is a valuable resource for researching your family. So going to your public library, you have access to all kinds of historical records, vital statistics. Many times you can find in public libraries. You can also find free subscriptions sometimes. You can subscriptions to things like Ancestry, Family Search, and those kind of resources are many times free in a library, just with a library card. And then people do donate their family histories to libraries. And so sometimes you might find your own family history there in a library.
I didn't know any of that. That is amazing. And I know libraries, some it's dedicated, but they're genealogy libraries. I know in Houston, there's a whole separate building.
Right. In Houston, there is the Clayton Library. It's one of the top genealogical libraries in the country.
Oh, wow.
And it has resources on every state in the United States. Some people think that just because the library resides in a state, that it will only focus on that one state. But in reality, they had resources on every state in the US. And so people shouldn't be, first of all, our ancestors migrated from many places.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we assume they were only in Texas. I hear that a lot from people. No, my ancestors were only in Texas. But when
No.
you start looking at the records, you figure out,
Right?
he served in the Civil War. He came to this state. He left Virginia. He went to New York. I mean, you have to be open about when you're doing research about where your ancestors are. So, public libraries, all kinds of resources to help, you find your ancestors.
That is so cool. You talked about something that I wanted to ask earlier about creating a family tree. And I want to talk about two kinds of family trees. There's just the family tree of, me, my siblings, my parents, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, next generation, and going back and back. But there's also a medical family tree. Can you talk about both and how do you create them?
Well, okay, so of course, everybody should have a generational tree, that explains at least going back to your great grandparents. I said that's a basic, but a lot of people do not know who their grandparents were. So that's a start. And when you do that generational tree, what you will be collecting are things like birth certificates, marriage licenses, and death certificates. And so one of the important things about a death certificate, it tells you something about the health of your ancestor, what they died from. And so that is another aspect that you can add to your family tree. What conditions was it blood pressure? Was it, sometimes you find out your ancestor was murdered. Sometimes, you will find out the diseases that you might be experiencing in those death certificates. And you can also see patterns, hypertension, diabetes, those kinds of things, and documenting. Do you know what all of your grandparents died from?
Let me ask you something on
all of your siblings? Mm-hmm.
Now, is that you when you talk about go and get it? You mean we can get that like from looking in public records and finding their death? Something talk about going to the library and looking at public records, or how do we access that information?
So there are two major sites that people use to access that kind of record. Some states have restrictions on those. Sometimes you have to write in to get permission and you may have to pay a fee. But if you're talking about grandparents, great grandparents, and back, you can access familysearch.org for free. And when you're searching for your ancestor, you're going to find, you hopefully, depending on when they were born, you might find a birth certificate or a delayed birth certificate. And most people have a death certificate if they're no longer here. So the death certificates you can access free on Family Search. Also, for a subscription, you can go to Ancestry. And so there are other sites like MyHeritage and Genealogy Bank where they have those kinds of vital statistics and records. But the most critical one is that one, the death certificate. What does it tell you about your family health and their medical condition when they die? How old were they? Is another important thing to understand. If you have ancestors who are dying in their 50s, that may indicate something, but it gives you information that you can share with your physician so that you can be aware of things that might be affecting your family, and unique diseases, diseases that people don't really think about.
That might be
you might discover those, and you might be having symptoms. It will also help you be on the lookout for that kind of thing. You know, you talk about even mental illness. Sometimes records will reflect that. You know, if your ancestors were, you know, back in the day, treating mental illness was not a pleasant thing.
No.
Sometimes even people were sent to medical facilities as a way to get a divorce or get rid of a spouse, or, you know, that kind of thing. But those records exist, and you can find them doing research. And so that also.
Did you find that kind of record? What kind of, would that be like on the familysearch.org?
Yes, it would. For instance, people who were confined, let's say, well, up until I guess Ronald Reagan was in office, the census records reflect if somebody was in a mental institution, or if they were in an orphanage, or, you know, those kinds of things. So the census records sometimes have that kind of information is available for individuals to understand their family, what their family's journey was, you know, what happened to them, what did they encounter, you know, how did they deal with the struggles that were going on during their time. There are documents that will come up that will reflect that information. So I would say, if you're looking at a census record, most people only look for the name, the birth date, but there are other columns on the census record,
right?
And some of them will indicate. I mean, they use antiquated words, you know, like insane or, you know, that kind of thing. But it gives you a glimpse on what the family was struggling with.
Wow, something I would have never thought of either.
And if you find it there, many times you can go to that institution and request that information, depending on, you know, how prevalent, or if you have a real desire to understand what happened to that ancestor.
Right. Wow, that could be so much. It seems like it's time consuming. Would you say it is?
Well, you know, some people, genealogy is at its best, for me, a hobby. Some people get obsessed by it. Some people stay up all night long trying to solve a mystery. So if you love to solve mysteries and that kind of thing,
I could definitely see that.
It could consume a lot of your time. It could definitely do that.
Yeah. But man, seems like a lot of fun. I know I've done when I lived in Houston, I went to the Clayton Library once or twice, and it was actually the first time it was just overwhelming. You know, because it was so much. I'm like, where do I get started? Oh my gosh. And I know I now live in the Dallas area, and there are genealogy libraries. There are genealogy rooms in the library here. And so wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, you know, look and see where you might find, you know, how to research genealogy where you are. It's
another resource is the digital library world. Almost every state has a digital library. In Texas, it's called the Portal to Texas History.
Oh, okay.
And so on that site, you can find records and documents related to just about anything that happened in Texas, including the people who lived during that time. So if somebody's researching for instance, in Louisiana, I think it's called the Louisiana Digital Library. Every state has a digital library. So my suggestion is you just Google digital library in whatever state you're in. And that's also another resource that is underutilized by individuals trying to research their family history.
And that's the thing. People often think how complicated it is. That's why I asked that question. Well, is it hard? And it really isn't. And like you say, it's how much time you want to put into it. But there are so many resources now. It's much easier now to do it than when I first started wanting to, research a decade or so ago because of what you can do online.
I mean, think about having to use microfiche. Some people don't even know what that is.
Right.
And not just microfiche. The fact that a lot of the documents are in cursive writing if you want to get further and further back. And they stopped teaching it when my children were in school.
Yes.
So you have generations who don't understand cursive writing. So, but now, thanks to AI and other apps, they will read those documents. Not always perfect, but they can assist you. So, it's just so much out there now to help you, research your family. And one other thing I tell people, if you're researching your family, get with other people who are researching their families. And so get involved in genealogy societies or historical societies, because many times they're researching your own family.
True.
I know the group, the Houston chapter of Afro-American history and genealogy here. We do community research. We did several families in Washington County. You never know what a genealogy society is researching unless you go and you visit them and see, and they may have those kind of records. So there's a lot now to help people, a lot more than when Alex Haley's Roots came out.
A whole lot more. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Last thing I'll ask, what benefits, because I can think of some, but intrinsically, what benefits can someone gain from a young person to an elder? What can they gain by just studying your own genealogy, your own family history?
Well, I believe it increases your family identification, and it increases self-esteem. And many times it decreases anxiety, because if you see what these folks went through and they survived, you're made of that same stock. You can do a lot yourself. I think it allows you to see the resilience of a people, and their struggles and the things. We're going to always have struggles in life, but to see individuals who survived, and they are you are them, you are a part of them. I think it leads more to internal focus and control on your emotions and your outlook on life. Generations. I don't care what generation you're in, they want a connection, and they want to know, what is the purpose for my life? And when you see what the folks before you have done, that's part of alleviating some of that anxiety, I believe, and providing, a deeper understanding of what a person's place is in the world, what their particular place is in the world. So, and how well you handle stress, because it helps you cope with stress. Because when you see, I talk about my grandmother, one of my grandmothers, she had 11 boys and 3 girls. Now imagine that. I only had 2 kids. But look, they survived and they thrived. And there are a lot of folks who have families, big families.
They had much bigger families. Yeah.
They had much bigger families.
Especially those who lived in the country and they were living off the land. You needed people to go work that land.
Oh, yes.
More children, the more children, the more children you needed.
Yeah, it took a lot, And look about people pick up their bags and they move across the country for a better life. Now, how many people don't do that? That means that they left behind what was not good for them, and they were able to pick up and go somewhere else. And, the migration patterns show you that your
Right.
families didn't just settle for
Nope.
that plantation life, I say.
We'll find something better.
They found something better, always looking for something better.
Right. Something we should always continue to do. Well, believe it or not, our time is up. You have given us so much information. So for those of you who are out there looking to study your own history, it's time to do it. You've been given some resources to do it. So I challenge you to get out there and know your own history. I am Miss B, the Black Couch Therapist, and I say I'm here to help you become a better you. And as you study your genealogy, you can do that. And I always end with saying, vote, vote, vote. Be an educated voter. There are changes that need to be made. And since we're talking about genealogy in our family, those not too far back in our distant family past couldn't vote and fought to vote. And there are those who say, well, vote, we've been voting and things haven't changed. Keep doing it. That's all I can say about that. So Dolores Rodgers, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's amazing.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this information with your audience. Thank you.
All right.